Eli Thornton's hands would not stop shaking. He had seen death before. He had caused death before. But nothing. Not the bloodied fields of Gettysburg, not the shallow graves he had dug with his own 2 hands, had prepared him for the 8 bodies swaying beneath his gate. 8 Apache girls, hanging upside down, their hair brushing the dust like black rivers flowing toward hell. He cut the first rope before his mind caught up with his hands. And in that moment, Eli Thornton made a choice that would cost him everything he had spent 10 years trying to build. Jeb, welcome to Frontier Heart Stories, my friend. I am so grateful you are here with me today. This story traveled across mountains and rivers to find you. Please subscribe to my channel and stay with me until the very end. And leave a comment telling me which city you are listening from. I want to know how far this tale has wandered. Now, let us begin. The autumn wind carried the smell of coming snow when Eli Thornton first saw them. He had been riding since dawn, pushing his tired mare up the winding trail toward Bitter Root Valley. 10 years of saving every dollar. 10 years of sleeping in barns and eating scraps. 10 years of running from memories that never stopped chasing him. And now, finally, he owned land. His land. The deed crinkled in his coat pocket, signed and stamped by the territorial office in Helena. 300 acres of Montana wilderness, including access to an underground spring that never froze even in the harshest winter. It was supposed to be his new beginning. But as Eli crested the final ridge and saw the wooden gate of his new ranch, his heart stopped beating. 8 figures hung beneath the crossbeam, upside down, ropes tied around their ankles, their long black hair cascading toward the ground like dark waterfalls. "Dear God," Eli whispered. He spurred his mare forward, his Winchester already in his hand. But as he drew closer, he realized they were not corpses, not yet. One of them moved, a slight twitch, a shallow breath that made her chest rise and fall like a wounded bird trying to fly. Eli leaped from his horse before it fully stopped. He hit the ground, running his boots, kicking up dust as he reached the first girl. She was young, maybe 16. Her face was swollen with bruises, her lips cracked and bleeding. But her eyes dark, as midnight flickered open when his shadow fell across her face. "Hold on," Eli said. "I am cutting you down." He pulled his knife and sawed through the rope. The girl fell, and he caught her in arms that had not held anything living in 10 long years. She weighed almost nothing, like a bundle of bones wrapped in deerskin. He laid her gently on the ground and moved to the next one. Cut, catch, lay down, cut, catch, lay down. 8 times he repeated the motion, his hands growing steadier even as his rage grew hotter. By the time he reached the last girl, his knife was slick with rope fiber and his shirt was soaked with sweat. This one was older than the others, maybe 25 or 26. Her face was sharp, angular, with cheekbones that could cut glass. A long scar ran from her temple to her jaw, old and faded. She had fought before. She had survived before. When Eli cut her rope and caught her, her eyes opened immediately. Clear, alert, dangerous. "You are not with the Whitmore clan," she said. Not a question. Eli looked at her steadily. "If I were ma'am, you would not be breathing to ask me that." Something flickered in her eyes. Not trust, it was too early for trust, but recognition. Recognition that he was different from whatever devils had strung her up like an animal. "My sisters," she said. "Are they alive? All 7 of them? Can you stand?" She pushed herself up on trembling arms. "I can do more than stand." Eli did not doubt it. The cabin was small but sturdy. Whoever had built it had known Montana winters. Thick walls, a stone fireplace, windows placed high to keep out the cold. Eli had pictured himself sitting by that fireplace alone, reading old letters from a life he could never return to. Instead, he was laying out blankets for 8 Apache girls who looked like they had crawled out of a grave. The youngest one could not have been more than 12. She lay curled in a ball, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. Eli covered her with his own coat and moved on. He boiled water, found the herbs he always carried: yarrow for wounds, willow bark for pain, and brewed a bitter tea. He was no healer, but a man did not survive 10 years of wandering without learning how to patch up broken things, including himself. When the tea was ready, he carried it to the oldest sister first. She was sitting up now, her back against the wall, watching him with those hawk-sharp eyes. "Drink this," Eli said. "It will help." She took the cup, but did not drink. "Why did you cut us down?" "Because some things a man cannot walk past." That is not an answer. Eli sat down across from her, his Winchester resting across his knees, close enough to talk, far enough to give her space. 10 years ago, he said slowly, I came home from the war to find my wife and daughter dead, burned alive by men who wanted what little we had. I was not there to save them. He paused, staring at the fire. I have been running from that ever since. But running does not change what happened. It does not bring them back. He looked at her directly. When I saw you and your sisters hanging there, I thought about what kind of man I want to be. The kind who keeps running, or the kind who finally stops and fights for something. The woman studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she raised the cup to her lips and drank. I am Winona, she said. These are my sisters, some by blood, some by bond. We are the last of our band. Eli Thornton. Eli Thornton. She tested the name like she was testing a blade. You bought this land. Every acre. Paid for it with 10 years of my life. Something dark crossed Winona's face. Then you bought land paid for in blood. Our father's blood. Our mother's blood. The blood of everyone we ever loved. Eli felt his stomach drop. I do not understand. Winona set down the cup. One by one, her sisters had woken up and gathered around her. 8 pairs of dark eyes fixed on Eli with expressions ranging from fear to hatred to cautious hope. This land, Winona said, was never yours to buy. It was stolen from us 3 years ago by a man named Cornelius Whitmore. Eli recognized the name. Whitmore was one of the richest men in Montana Territory, owned half the cattle operations between Helena and the Canadian border, had connections to judges, marshals, even territorial governors. Whitmore, Eli repeated. He is the one who strung you up, his men, led by a half-dead creature named Silas Hawkins. Winona's voice hardened. They came for us because of what we carry. What do you carry? Winona reached into her dress and pulled out a small piece of tanned leather. On it were markings, lines, and symbols that meant nothing to Eli. Our father was the keeper of the spring, she said, the only water source in 50 miles that flows year-round. When Whitmore came to take it, our father refused to tell him where the spring entered the land. So Whitmore killed him, killed our mother, killed everyone in our band. Everyone except us. Why not you? Because our father was clever. Before he died, he split the map to the spring into 8 pieces, one for each of us. Whitmore cannot find the water without all 8 pieces, and he cannot get all 8 pieces without us alive. Eli looked at the other 7 girls. Each one, he now realized, carried a fragment of a secret that had gotten their entire family killed. So why hang you upside down at the gate? He asked. Why not just take the pieces by force? Winona's smile was cold. Because Whitmore is patient. He knew that if he strung us up like bait, someone would come, a drifter, a prospector, a fool who thought he was buying empty land. She tilted her head, studying him. He was waiting to see who you were, whether you would walk past or cut us down. And now that I cut you down, now he knows you are a threat. He will come for you, Eli Thornton. He will come for all of us. Eli absorbed this information in silence. His new land, his fresh start, his dream of peace. All of it was built on a foundation of murder. "Then I reckon we have a problem," he said finally. "Reckon?" The second oldest sister spoke up. She was leaner than Winona, with quick eyes and a voice like river water. "That is your answer. We tell you that you bought stolen land, that killers are coming for us, and you reckon we have a problem." "Nayland." Winona's voice was sharp. "Enough." "No." Nayland stood up, wincing from her injuries. "We have heard enough empty words from white men. He will take what he can from this land and leave us to die when Whitmore's men return. They always do." Eli stood up too. Not aggressively, he was careful about that, but firmly. "I understand your anger," he said. "I would feel the same if I were you. But I am not leaving." "You should," Nayland shot back. "Leave now, and maybe Whitmore lets you live. Stay, and you die with us." "Then I die standing." Eli's voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "I have spent 10 years running from who I was, running from what I lost, running from the guilt of not being there when my family needed me. I am done running." He looked around at all 8 sisters. "I did not know this land was stolen. I did not know about the spring or the map or any of it. But I know now, and I am telling you I will not take what belongs to you. I will not profit from your suffering." "Pretty words," Nayland said. "We have heard pretty words before." "Then do not listen to my words. Watch what I do." The youngest sister, the one who could not be more than 12, spoke up from her pile of blankets. Her voice was thin and reedy, like wind through broken glass. "He gave me his coat." Everyone turned to look at her. "When I was cold," she continued, "he gave me his coat, and he did not ask for anything." Nayland opened her mouth to argue, but Winona raised a hand. "Adsila speaks truth," Winona said. "He did not know we were watching. He did not know we would wake. He showed kindness when no one was looking." She turned to Eli. "That is harder to fake than words." Eli felt something shift in the room. Not acceptance, it was still too early for that, but a crack in the wall of distrust. "What happens now?" he asked. Winona stood up steady now despite her wounds. "Now we wait. Whitmore's man Silas will come tonight to check if anyone found us. When he sees we are gone, he will report back. By tomorrow, Whitmore will know everything." "How long do we have?" "1 day, maybe 2. After that, he comes with everyone he has." Eli nodded slowly. "Then we have 1 day to prepare." They worked through the afternoon. The cabin had only 1 door and 4 windows. Eli secured the door with a heavy beam, while Nayland and 2 of the other sisters, Katori and Mika, gathered stones to pile beneath the windows. Winona's injuries were worse than she let on. Eli could see it in the way she moved, careful and stiff, favoring her left side. But she refused to rest. "The spring?" she said, drawing in the dirt floor with a stick. "It enters the land here through a cave in the western canyon. Our father found it when he was a boy. He spent his whole life protecting it. And the map pieces show how to reach it. The map shows the safe path. The canyon is full of dead ends and drop-offs. Without the map, you could wander for days and never find the source." Eli studied the rough drawing. "If Whitmore has been trying to find this spring for 3 years, why not just follow the water downstream? Because the water flows underground for most of its journey. It only surfaces here on this land through a seep that looks like any other patch of wet ground. Without knowing where to dig, you would never find it." "Clever. Our father was clever. That is why Whitmore killed him." There was no self-pity in Winona's voice, just cold fact. Eli respected that. "Tell me about the others," he said. "Your sisters." Winona glanced at the women working around the cabin. "Nayland you have met. She speaks before she thinks, but her heart is strong. Katori is quiet, She sees things others miss. Mika is the fastest runner I have ever known. She once outran a stallion for 3 miles. She pointed to 3 sisters working together near the fireplace. Chenoa knows herbs and healing better than anyone. She kept us alive after our parents died. Helona is the best shot among us, our father taught her personally. And Ayana. Winona's voice softened. Ayana was betrothed to be married when Whitmore came. Her intended was killed trying to protect our family. She has not spoken since. Eli looked at the young woman sitting apart from the others. She was maybe 20, with hair that fell past her waist and eyes that stared at nothing. "And the little one?" Eli asked. "Adsila. Our mother's last gift. She was born during a snowstorm while our father fought off raiders. Mother died bringing her into the world, but she made us promise to protect her." Winona's jaw tightened. "We have kept that promise. Barely." Eli felt the weight of their story settle over him. 8 sisters bound by blood and tragedy, carrying the last hope of their people on their shoulders. And now their fate was tangled up with his. "I need to tell you something," he said. Winona turned to face him. "I served in the war. Union side. I have killed men more than I can count. Some of them deserved it. Some of them were just boys in the wrong uniform." Eli paused. "I am not a good man. I have done things that still wake me up at night. But I made a promise to myself when I came out here. No more running. No more looking away when something needs to be done." "And what needs to be done now?" "Now." Eli looked at the 8 sisters at the cabin that was supposed to be his sanctuary, at the land that was soaked in blood he had not spilled but had inherited nonetheless. "Now I reckon we figure out how to survive what is coming. Together." Winona studied him for a long moment. Then she extended her hand, not in the white man's handshake, but palm-up, fingers open. "Among my people," she said, "this means I offer you trust. It is not given lightly, and it can be taken back." Eli placed his hand on hers. Her skin was calloused and warm. "I will not give you reason to take it back." Night fell fast in the mountains. Eli took the first watch, positioning himself near the window facing east. That was the direction Silas would come from, if Winona was right. The 8 sisters slept in a cluster near the fireplace, huddled together for warmth and comfort. All except Winona, who sat across from Eli with her back against the wall. "You should rest," he said. "I will rest when this is over." "That might be a long time." "Then I will be very tired." Despite everything, Eli almost smiled. Almost. "Tell me about Silas," he said. "You mentioned he is half dead. What did you mean?" Winona's expression darkened. "Fire. When he was young, something burned half his face away. The story is that Whitmore saved him from an orphanage and raised him as a weapon. He feels nothing. No mercy. No guilt. He does what Whitmore commands without question." "A dog on a leash?" "A rabid dog. But even rabid dogs can be put down." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind moan outside. "Your wife," Winona said suddenly, "and your daughter, what were their names?" Eli stiffened. He had not spoken those names aloud in years. "Sarah," he said finally. "My wife was Sarah, and my daughter was Emma. She was 5 years old. Tell me about them." "Why?" Winona shrugged. "Because the dead deserve to be remembered. And because we may all be dead soon. Better to speak their names now than let them be forgotten." It was a strange kind of comfort, but somehow it worked. "Sarah was the strongest woman I ever knew," Eli said slowly. "She could plow a field birth, a calf shoot a rifle, and still have supper on the table by sundown. She never complained, never asked for more than we had. She just made everything work." "And Emma." "Emma." Eli's voice cracked slightly. "Emma was pure light. She used to pick wildflowers and weave them into crowns. She called me her brave knight, said I would protect her from all the dragons." He paused. "I was 3 days' ride away when the dragons came. By the time I got home, there was nothing left but ashes." Winona was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Among my people we believe the dead walk beside us. They watch over us, guide us. They do not blame us for what we could not prevent." That is a kind belief. It is not belief, it is truth. Your wife and daughter, they see you now. They see what you are doing for us, and they are proud. Eli did not believe in spirits or ghosts. But in that moment, sitting in the dark with a woman he had just met facing a war he had never asked for, he wanted to believe. More than anything, he wanted to believe. Around midnight, the horses outside began to stir. Eli was on his feet instantly, Winchester in hand. Winona moved to the opposite window, a hunting knife gleaming in the firelight. "He is here," she whispered. Eli peered through the gap in the shutters. A single rider was approaching from the east, moving slow and careful. Even in the darkness, Eli could see the way he sat. His horse stiff, unnatural like a scarecrow given life. "Silas," he murmured. The rider stopped about 50 yards from the cabin. He did not dismount. He just sat there, staring at the door. Then his voice rang out thin and raspy like dry leaves scraping across stone. "Eli Thornton, I know you are in there. I know you took what is ours." Eli did not respond. He kept his rifle trained on the dark figure. "Mr. Whitmore is a patient man," Silas continued. "He is willing to make a deal. Give us the 8 pieces. Give us the map. And you can walk away with your life." Silence. "I know you are a reasonable man, Thornton. A businessman. You paid for this land fair and square. We are not asking you to leave. We are just asking you to give us what does not belong to you." Behind him, Eli heard the sisters gathering. One of them, Nayland, moved toward the door, but Winona grabbed her arm. "Wait," Winona hissed. Silas tilted his head as if listening. No response. "That is unfortunate. Mr. Whitmore will be disappointed. He was hoping we could settle this peacefully." Then Silas reached into his saddlebag and pulled something out. A human skull, bleached white by the sun. This belonged to the old Indian who used to protect the spring. What was his name? Oh yes, Takoda. Silas held the skull up like a trophy. "We kept it as a reminder of what happens to those who refuse Mr. Whitmore's generosity." Eli heard someone behind him gasp. One of the sisters, maybe more than one, began to cry softly. Their father. Silas was holding their father's skull. Something cold and terrible uncoiled in Eli's chest. Something he had not felt since the war, since the day he came home to ashes and bones. He stood up, walked to the door, and stepped outside. "Thornton," Silas said, surprise flickering across his ruined face. "I was beginning to think—" "Put it down." Silas tilted his head. "Pardon." "The skull. Put it down. Gently. Or I will shoot you off that horse and bury you next to him." For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Silas laughed. It was an ugly sound like grinding glass. "You have spirit, Thornton. I respect that. But spirit will not save you. Tomorrow Mr. Whitmore comes with 40 men. 40 guns. You have— what? A rusty Winchester and 8 half-dead squaws." Eli's finger tightened on the trigger. "You have until dawn to leave this valley," Silas said, lowering the skull back into his saddlebag. "After that there will be no more negotiations. Only fire. Only blood. Only death." He turned his horse and began to ride away. "Silas." The rider paused but did not turn. "Tell Whitmore something for me." "What?" Eli's voice was calm. Cold. Final. "Tell him I am done running." Silas laughed again, softer this time, almost admiring. "You will regret those words, Thornton. I promise you that." Then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Eli stood there for a long moment, his breath fogging in the cold air. When he finally turned back toward the cabin, all 8 sisters were standing in the doorway. Winona stepped forward. Her face was streaked with tears she would never admit to, but her voice was steady. "That skull," she said. "That was our father." "I know. You stepped out there. You faced him. I know." Winona took a deep breath. Then she did something Eli did not expect. She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. "Among my people," she said, "this is how we mark a warrior who has proven himself. You are not one of us by blood. But from this moment, you are one of us in spirit." One by one, the other 7 sisters stepped forward and placed their hands on his chest. Nalin, Katori, Mika, Chenoa, Halona, even silent Ayana, and finally, little Adsila, who had to stand on her tiptoes to reach. 8 hands, 8 hearts, 8 lives now bound to his. Eli felt something break inside him, something that had been locked away since Sarah and Emma died. He was not alone anymore. "Tomorrow they come," he said, his voice rough with emotion. 40 men, 40 guns. Winona nodded. "And tomorrow we show them what happens when they underestimate the daughters of Dakota, and the man who chose to stand with them." Winona almost smiled. Almost. "Yes," she said, "and him." The night was cold, and dawn was coming, and an army of killers was riding toward them. But in that moment, standing in the doorway of a cabin built on stolen land, surrounded by 8 women who had every reason to hate him but had chosen to trust him. Instead, Eli Thornton felt something he had not felt in 10 years. Hope. The first light of dawn crept over the mountains like a thief stealing the darkness inch by inch. Eli had not slept. Neither had Winona. They sat on opposite sides of the cabin, watching the windows, listening to every sound the wind carried. The other 7 sisters slept in shifts 2 hours at a time. Even little Adsila took her turn at the window, her small hands wrapped around a hunting knife that looked too big for her fingers. "She should not be here," Eli said quietly, nodding toward the sleeping child. "None of them should." Winona did not look at him. "And where would you have them go? The reservation, the missions, the shallow graves. Whitmore digs for anyone who stands in his way. That is not what I meant." "I know what you meant." Winona finally turned to face him. "You think we are too young, too weak, too female to fight. You think you should send us away and face Whitmore alone." The thought crossed my mind. "Then let it cross right back out." Winona stood up and walked to where her sisters slept. She looked down at them with an expression Eli could not quite read. Pride, maybe, or grief, or both. "When Whitmore's men came for our village," she said, "the warriors fought. Our father, our uncles, our brothers, they all fought, and they all died. Do you know who survived?" Eli shook his head. "The women. The ones who were supposed to hide. The ones who were supposed to be protected." Winona's voice hardened. "We survived because we refused to hide. We survived because when the men fell, we picked up their weapons and kept fighting. We survived because we are stronger than anyone ever expected us to be." She turned back to Eli. "So no, we will not leave. We will not hide. We will stand beside you and fight for what is ours. All of us. Even Adsila." Eli looked at the sleeping child again. She could not weigh more than 70 pounds. Her arms were thin as kindling. She should be playing with dolls, not gripping knives. But Winona was right. There was nowhere safe to send them. And even if there was, he had no right to make that choice for them. "All right," he said. "Then we fight together." Winona nodded once. Together. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Neither of them was ready to examine. By mid-morning, The preparations were nearly complete. Nayland and Katori had dug a shallow trench around the cabin's eastern approach, filling it with sharpened stakes, hidden beneath a thin layer of dirt. Mika had scouted the surrounding terrain and found 3 natural choke points where a small group could hold off a larger force. Halona, the best shot among them, had taken position in the hayloft of the half-burned barn. From there, she could see nearly a mile in every direction. If Whitmore's men came, she would spot them first. Eli found Chenoa in the back room of the cabin, grinding herbs with a flat stone. The smell was sharp and medicinal, cutting through the dust and wood smoke. "What are you making?" he asked. "Poultices for wounds, tinctures for pain." Chenoa did not look up from her work. "When the fighting starts, there will be blood. I want to be ready." "You have done this before." It was not a question, but Chenoa answered anyway. 3 years ago, when they killed our family, I was the one who stitched the wounds. I was the one who held my sisters while they screamed. I was the one who closed our mother's eyes." Her hands never stopped moving, grinding and mixing with practiced efficiency. "I was 16 years old." Eli did not know what to say. What could anyone say to that? "I am sorry," he managed. Chenoa finally looked up. Her eyes were dry, but there was an old pain in them that would never fully heal. "Do not be sorry," she said. "Be ready. That is all I ask." Eli nodded and left her to her work. Outside, he found Ayanna sitting alone near the well. She was the one Winona had said was betrothed before Whitmore came. The one who had not spoken since. She was weaving something. Eli could not tell what. Her fingers moved mechanically, threading strands of dried grass into a pattern only she could see. He sat down beside her, leaving enough space that she would not feel crowded. "Mind if I sit?" No response. Not even a glance. "I used to do this," Eli said. "After Sarah and Emma died, I did not speak for almost a year. People thought I had gone mad. Maybe I had. But the silence, it was the only thing that made sense. The world had stopped making sense, and words just made it worse." Ayanna's hands paused for a moment, then resumed weaving. "I am not going to ask you to talk," Eli continued. "I am not going to ask you to forgive what happened or move on or any of that nonsense. I just want you to know that I understand. And when you are ready to speak again, if you ever are, I will be here to listen." Duh. He stood up and started to walk away. "Coda." The voice was so soft, Eli almost missed it. He turned back. Ayanna was still looking at her weaving, but her lips were moving. "His name was Coda. It means friend. He was my friend before he was anything else." A single tear slid down her cheek. "They made me watch. Whitmore's men. They made me watch while they killed him, and then they laughed." Eli felt his hands clench into fists. "Ayanna, I want them to pay." Her voice was stronger now, shaking with something that might have been rage or grief or both. "I want them to pay for what they took from me, from all of us." "They will," Eli said. "I promise you that." Ayanna finally looked at him. Her eyes were red, but there was a fire burning in them that had not been there before. "Do not make promises you cannot keep, Eli Thornton." "I never do." For the first time since he had met her, Ayanna almost smiled. The afternoon brought clouds, heavy gray masses that rolled in from the west, turning the sky the color of old bruises. The temperature dropped, and the wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. "Storm coming," Mika said, studying the clouds. "Big one." Nayland looked up from the rifle she was cleaning. "Good. Rain will slow them down. Give us more time." "Or it will give them cover," Winona said. "Whitmore is not stupid. He knows this land. He will use the storm to his advantage." Eli had been thinking the same thing. A driving rain would limit visibility, muffle sound, make it harder to see the enemy coming until they were right on top of you. "We need a plan," he said. "Not just defenses. A real plan. We are 8 women and 1 man against 40 guns," Nolan said flatly. "What kind of plan can overcome those odds? The kind that does not try to overcome them directly." Eli pulled out the crude map Winona had drawn in the dirt floor. "You said there were 3 choke points in the surrounding terrain, places where a small group could hold off a larger force." "That is true. Then we do not defend the cabin. We make them come to us through those choke points. We bleed them before they ever reach the door." Winona studied the map. "That could work, but it would mean splitting our forces, leaving the cabin less defended. The cabin is just wood and stone. It can be rebuilt. You and your sisters cannot." "Neither can you." Eli met her eyes. "I have made my peace with that." "Well, I have not." Winona's voice was sharp. "You do not get to decide to die for us, Eli Thornton. You do not get to sacrifice yourself and call it nobility. We have lost too many people already. We will not lose you too." The words hung in the air between them. The other sisters had stopped what they were doing, watching the exchange with cautious eyes. "Winona," Eli started. "No, you listen to me." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "When you cut us down from that gate, you became part of this, part of us. That means you do not get to throw your life away. You fight, you survive, and you help us rebuild. That is the deal. I do not remember agreeing to any deal. You agreed when you gave Adsila your coat. You agreed when you faced Silas alone. You agreed when you put your hand over mine and promised not to give me reason to take back my trust." Winona's voice softened. "You are one of us now, Eli, whether you like it or not." Eli did not know how to respond. He had spent 10 years pushing people away, building walls, convincing himself that he was better off alone. And now this woman, this fierce, stubborn, impossibly brave woman, was tearing those walls down with nothing but words. "All right," he said finally. "We fight together. We survive together. I will not do anything stupid." "Define stupid." "Anything you would not approve of." Winona actually laughed. It was a short, surprised sound, quickly suppressed, but it was real. "That is a very broad definition, Eli Thornton." "I am a very cautious man?" "Ha!" Nayland snorted from across the room. "You cut 8 strange women down from a hanging beam with 40 killers on your trail. Cautious is not the word I would use." "Determined, then." "Stupid," Nayland countered. "But the good kind of stupid. The kind that might just keep us alive." Coming from Nayland, that was practically a declaration of love. The storm broke just before sunset. Rain came down in sheets, turning the ground to mud and the air to mist. Lightning split the sky, followed by thunder that shook the cabin walls. The temperature dropped further, and Eli could see his breath fogging in the dim light. "They will not come in this," Mika said hopefully. "Even Whitmore is not that crazy." "Do not count on it." Winona was at the window, peering into the rain. "Silas does not feel the cold. Whitmore does not feel anything at all. They will come when they think we are weakest. Then we show them what weak really looks like." Helona appeared in the doorway, soaking wet, her rifle wrapped in oilcloth. "I counted dust clouds to the east before the storm hit. At least 30 riders, maybe more. They are making camp about 5 miles out. Waiting for dawn. Or waiting for the storm to cover their approach." Eli made a decision. "We do not wait for them. We go out there tonight and slow them down." "In this storm," Nolan shook her head. "That is suicide." "No. It is the last thing they will expect." Eli grabbed his Winchester and started loading extra rounds into his pockets. "They think we are huddled in here, scared, waiting to be slaughtered. They are not expecting us to strike first." Winona stepped in front of him, blocking his path. What happened to not doing anything stupid? This is not stupid. This is strategy. It is both. Probably. Eli tried to step around her, but she moved with him. Winona, I have to do this. If we let them regroup, if we let them come at us with their full strength, we do not stand a chance. But if we hit them now, while they are cold and wet and complacent, we might just even the odds. Then I am coming with you. No. That was not a request. They stared at each other. Two stubborn wills, neither willing to bend. If you go alone, you die, Winona said. You are good, Eli. I can see that. But you are not good enough to take on 30 men by yourself in a storm. And if I take you with me, and you die, who leads your sisters? Who protects them? Nalin. She is ready. She has been ready for a long time. Winona's voice softened. I am not asking your permission. I am telling you how it is going to be. We go together, or no one goes. Eli knew he was not going to win this argument. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the steel in her eyes. This was a woman who had survived horrors he could barely imagine. She was not about to back down now. Fine, he said, but you follow my lead. And if things go wrong, you run. No arguments. I will run if you run. That is not what I said. I know, but that is the deal. Eli sighed. It was the best he was going to get. 20 minutes later, they were moving through the storm. The rain had not let up. If anything, it was worse now, driving into their faces with enough force to sting. Visibility was maybe 30 feet, if that. Lightning flashes provided brief moments of clarity, followed by deeper darkness. Eli moved carefully, testing each step before committing his weight. The ground was treacherous mud and rocks hiding beneath pools of water. One wrong step could mean a twisted ankle, or worse. Winona moved beside him, silent as a ghost. She knew this land better than he did, and she guided them around obstacles he would never have seen in the dark. They did not speak. Words were useless in the storm anyway, swallowed by wind and rain before they could travel more than a foot or two. Instead, they communicated through gestures, a raised hand, a pointed finger, a touch on the shoulder. After about an hour, Winona stopped and held up her fist. Eli froze. Ahead, barely visible through the rain, a faint orange glow flickered. Firelight. The camp. They crept closer, staying low, using the storm as cover. The camp was arranged in a rough circle with a large tent in the center and smaller tents radiating outward. Men huddled under whatever shelter they could find, miserable and cold. Eli counted quickly. 32, maybe 33. Most of them looked half asleep, lulled by the storm and the assumption that no one would be crazy enough to attack in this weather. One man stood apart from the others near the central tent. Even with half his face hidden by shadows, Eli recognized him. Silas. He was not huddled against the cold like the others. He just stood there motionless, staring into the rain, as if he could see something no one else could. Maybe he could. Eli touched Winona's arm and gestured toward a line of horses tethered at the edge of camp. She nodded, understanding immediately. 40 men with no horses would be much slower than 40 men mounted. It would not win the battle, but it would buy time. And right now, time was all they had. They circled around the camp, staying just outside the firelight's reach. The horses were nervous, stamping and snorting at the thunder. A few guards had been posted nearby, but they were focused on the storm, not on the darkness behind them. Eli held up 3 fingers. Winona nodded. They moved in unison, shadows within shadows. Eli took the first guard with a chokehold, lowering him silently to the mud. Winona handled the second with her knife, quick and clean. The third never even knew they were there. The horses were another matter. They were tied in a long line, maybe 20 in all. Cutting them loose would make noise. The animals would panic, and panic would wake the camp. But that was exactly what Eli was counting on. He gestured for Winona to get ready, then pulled out his knife and started sawing through the ropes. The first horse bolted as soon as it was free, crashing through the camp with wild eyes and flying hooves. Then the second. Then the third. Men shouted scrambled dove for cover as 20 terrified animals stampeded through their midst. Tents collapsed. Fires scattered. Someone screamed as a hoof caught him in the chest. And in the chaos, Eli and Winona slipped away into the storm. They ran for nearly a mile before slowing to a walk, both of them breathing hard. The rain had finally begun to ease, fading from a downpour to a steady drizzle. "That was insane," Winona said between breaths. "That was necessary." "It was both." Eli almost smiled. "Seems like everything tonight is both." They walked in silence for a while, the adrenaline slowly fading, replaced by exhaustion and cold. Eli's clothes were soaked through, and his boots squelched with every step. "Thank you," Winona said suddenly. Eli glanced at her. "For what?" "For not leaving us. For fighting beside us instead of for us." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "My whole life men have told me to stand back, to let them handle things, to be quiet and grateful and small. You have not done that, not once." "That is because I know better." "Do you?" "I had a wife who would have knocked me flat if I tried to tell her what to do, and a daughter who at 5 years old already had more spine than most grown men." Eli's voice softened. "They taught me that women are not something to be protected. They are something to stand beside." Winona was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold and rough with calluses, but her grip was strong. "Sure, your wife sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was. And your daughter. The best thing I ever did in my life." They walked like that for a while, hand in hand, neither of them willing to let go first. The cabin appeared through the mist, its windows glowing with firelight. "Safe, for now." "Eli," Winona said as they approached the door. "Yes." "When this is over, if we survive, what will you do?" It was a question Eli had not allowed himself to consider. His whole life, for the past decade, had been focused on reaching this land, building something new, finding peace. But that dream had shattered the moment he saw 8 bodies hanging from his gate. "I do not know," he admitted. "I thought I had it all figured out. Turns out I did not know anything." Winona squeezed his hand. "Maybe," she said, "we can figure it out together." Before Eli could respond, the cabin door flew open, and Naylin appeared, her face tight with worry. "Thank the spirits," she said. "We heard the horses. We thought—" "We are fine," Winona said. "Better than fine. We bought ourselves some time." "How much time?" Eli looked back at the darkness, at the storm that was finally beginning to pass, at the stars peeking through breaks in the clouds. "Not enough," he said, "but enough to get ready. They will come with the dawn, and when they do, we will be waiting." Naylin nodded, her expression hardening into determination. "Then we have work to do." They filed into the cabin where the other sisters waited with anxious eyes. Eli saw relief wash over their faces when they saw Winona alive and well. Adsala ran to her oldest sister and wrapped her arms around her waist, burying her face in Winona's wet clothes. "Shh," Winona murmured, stroking the child's hair. "I am here. I am not going anywhere." Eli watched them, feeling something twist in his chest. This was what he had lost. This was what he had spent 10 years trying to outrun. Family, connection, people who needed you and whom you needed in return. He had thought he could live without it. He had been wrong. "Eli." Chenoa appeared at his elbow, holding out a blanket. "You will catch your death if you stay in those wet clothes." He took the blanket gratefully. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Thank me when we survive tomorrow." It was not confidence. It was defiance. The stubborn refusal to accept defeat before the battle had even begun. Eli understood that feeling. He had lived with it for 10 years. Now he was going to fight for it. The night passed slowly, each hour stretching like taffy. They took turns sleeping and watching, but no one really rested. The tension was too thick, the stakes too high. Dawn came gray and cold, the storm's aftermath leaving the world washed clean and brutally clear. From the hayloft, Helona reported movement on the eastern horizon. "They are coming," she said. "I count maybe 25. The stampede must have scattered the rest." 25 is still a lot, Nayland said. 25 is better than 40. Eli checked his Winchester one more time, then looked around at the 8 women who had become against all odds his family. "Remember the plan. Stay behind cover. Do not take unnecessary risks. And if things go wrong, they will not." Winona cut in. "Because we are going to win." "How can you be so sure?" Winona smiled, fierce and bright and absolutely certain. "Because we have something they do not." "What is that?" "Something worth dying for." Eli looked at her, at all of them, and felt the last of his resistance crumble. She was right. They had something worth dying for, worth living for, and they were going to fight like hell to keep it. They came with the rising sun at their backs, spreading across the valley like a dark stain. Eli counted them from the cabin window. 26 riders, maybe 27. Fewer than expected, but still enough to overwhelm them if things went wrong. At the head of the column rode 2 men. One sat tall and straight on a black stallion, silver hair gleaming in the morning light. Even at this distance, Eli could see the arrogance in his posture, the absolute certainty of a man who had never been denied anything in his life. Cornelius Whitmore. Beside him, hunched like a vulture on a fence post, rode Silas Hawkins. His ruined face was turned toward the cabin, and Eli could have sworn those dead eyes were staring directly at him. "They are not charging," Nayland observed. "Why are they not charging?" "Because Whitmore is not a fool," Winona said. "He knows we did something to his camp last night. He is being cautious. Or he is waiting for something." Eli did not like the sound of that. He scanned the horizon looking for any sign of flanking riders or hidden reinforcements. Nothing. Just the 27 men spreading out in a loose semicircle around the cabin. Then Whitmore raised his hand, and the column stopped. A moment of absolute stillness. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then Whitmore's voice rang out clear and cultured, carrying easily across the distance. "Eli Thornton, I believe we have business to discuss." Eli looked at Winona. She shook her head slightly, but he had already made up his mind. "Stay here," he said. "If this goes wrong, stick to the plan." "Eli, I need to know what we are dealing with. I need to look him in the eye." Winona's jaw tightened, but she did not argue. She knew he was right. Eli stepped out onto the porch, Winchester in hand, but not raised. He walked slowly, deliberately, stopping about 30 feet from Whitmore's horse. Up close, Cornelius Whitmore looked exactly like what he was. A predator in gentleman's clothing. His suit was immaculate despite the long ride, his silver hair perfectly combed, his pale blue eyes cold as a frozen lake. "Mr. Thornton," Whitmore said pleasantly, "thank you for coming out. I do so prefer civilized conversation to barbarism." Funny words from a man who hangs women upside down like cattle? If the barb stung, Whitmore did not show it. "A regrettable necessity. Those women are holding something that belongs to me. I was merely encouraging them to share. By torturing them. By applying pressure. There is a difference." Eli felt his trigger finger twitch. "What do you want, Whitmore?" "Straight to business. I appreciate that." Whitmore leaned forward in his saddle. "I want what I have always wanted, Mr. Thornton. The map to the spring. All 8 pieces. You give me that, and I will let you walk away. I will even refund the money you paid for this land. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. And the women, they are not your concern. I am making them my concern." Whitmore's pleasant expression flickered, just for a moment. But Eli saw it. "You are making a mistake, Mr. Thornton. A costly one. I have 27 men behind me, all of them armed, all of them experienced. You have what, 8 half-starved Indian girls and a rusty rifle. Reckon we will find out." Whitmore sighed, the sound of a patient man dealing with a stubborn child. "I had hoped we could resolve this peacefully. I truly did. But if you insist on playing the hero—" He turned to Silas. "Show Mr. Thornton what happens to heroes in this valley." Silas reached into his saddlebag and pulled out something wrapped in bloody cloth. He unwrapped it slowly, deliberately, and held it up for Eli to see. A hand. A human hand, severed at the wrist. On one finger, a tarnished silver ring. "Do you recognize this?" Whitmore asked. "It belonged to the last man who tried to stand against me. A federal marshal, if you can believe it. He thought the law would protect him." Whitmore smiled thinly. He was wrong. Eli felt his stomach lurch, but he kept his face steady. "Marshal Harmon." "So you knew him. How unfortunate. He came to this valley 2 weeks ago asking questions, making threats. Silas dealt with him." Whitmore's voice hardened. "That is what happens to anyone who interferes with my business, Mr. Thornton. Man, woman, or child. I do not discriminate." Behind Eli, he heard a sharp intake of breath. One of the sisters had seen the hand. He could not tell which one. "You have until noon," Whitmore continued. "Bring me the map pieces and the women, and you live. Refuse, and I will burn this cabin to the ground with everyone inside. Then I will find the pieces myself, even if I have to sift through the ashes." He turned his horse and began riding back toward his men. Then he paused and looked over his shoulder. "One more thing, Mr. Thornton. In case you are thinking of running, I have men watching every trail out of this valley. There is no escape. There is only surrender or death." Then he was gone, swallowed by the wall of riders that closed ranks behind him. Eli stood there for a long moment, staring at the spot where Whitmore had been. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Pure white-hot rage that burned in his chest like a coal. He walked back to the cabin on legs that felt like wood. The sisters were waiting inside, their faces pale, their eyes wide. Winona stood at the front, her expression unreadable. "You heard?" Eli asked. "We heard." "The marshal is dead. Whitmore's men killed him." Winona nodded slowly. "I know. Harmon came to us 2 weeks ago. He promised to help. He promised to bring justice." Her voice cracked slightly. "We believed him. I am sorry." "Do not be sorry. Be angry." Winona's eyes blazed. "Harmon died trying to help us. We will not let his death be meaningless." Nayland stepped forward, her jaw set. "What do we do now? We cannot fight 27 men. We barely have enough weapons for half of us." "We do not fight them head-on," Eli said. "We make them come to us. We use the terrain, the choke points, everything we prepared. We bleed them until they break. And if they do not break—" Eli met her eyes. "Then we take as many of them with us as we can." It was not a comforting answer, but it was an honest one. Nayland seemed to appreciate that. "All right," she said. "Tell us what to do." The next 3 hours were a blur of activity. Eli positioned Helona in the hayloft with the best rifle and all the ammunition she could carry. Her job was simple: pick off anyone who got too close. Stay hidden. Do not miss. Mika and Katori took positions at the first choke point, a narrow gap between 2 rock formations, about 100 yards east of the cabin. They had bows, knives, and a handful of traps they had spent the morning preparing. Nalin and Chenoa held the second choke point closer to the cabin. They had the second rifle and a clear line of sight to anyone who made it past Mika and Katori. Ayana and Adsila stayed in the cabin with supplies and medical equipment. Ayana's hands were steady now, her eyes clear. Whatever had broken inside her was still broken, but she had found a way to function around the damage. That left Eli and Winona at the third and final line of defense: the cabin itself. "This is a good plan," Winona said as they checked their weapons one last time. "It is a desperate plan." "Desperate plans are all we have." Eli looked at her. In the harsh morning light, he could see every line on her face, every scar, every mark left by years of suffering. But he could also see something else. Strength, determination, hope. "Winona," he said, "if this does not work, it will work. But if it does not—" "Eli." She reached out and touched his face, her calloused palm rough against his cheek. "I have been preparing to die for 3 years. Every day I wake up and wonder if this is the day Whitmore finally catches us. The day everything ends." Her voice softened. "But since you came, I have started thinking about something else. Something I had almost forgotten." "What?" "Tomorrow. I have started thinking about tomorrow." Eli felt his heart crack open. He had spent 10 years building walls, and this woman had torn them down in 3 days. "Winona, A rifle shot cracked through the morning air. They both spun toward the window. In the distance they could see movement. Whitmore's men were advancing. "It has started," Winona said. "Get to your position." "Eli." "Go. I will be right behind you." She hesitated for just a moment, her dark eyes searching his face. Then she nodded and ran. Eli watched her go, then turned to face the window. The first wave came fast and hard, about a dozen men charging toward the cabin on horseback. They expected to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers, to crash through the perimeter before anyone could react. They were wrong. Halona's first shot took the lead rider out of his saddle. Before his body hit the ground, she had already chambered another round and fired again. A second man fell, then a third. The charge faltered. Horses reared and screamed. Men shouted in confusion. Then Mika and Katori sprang their trap. The narrow gap between the rock formations had been lined with tripwires, hidden beneath a thin layer of dust. When the first horses hit them, they went down hard, throwing their riders into the dirt. The ones behind them could not stop in time. Bodies piled up, horses thrashed, and the choke point became a killing ground. Arrows flew from the rocks above. Men screamed. More fell. In less than 2 minutes, the first wave was broken. The survivors retreated, dragging their wounded with them. They left 6 dead behind. But it was not over. Not even close. Eli could see Whitmore in the distance, sitting calmly on his horse, watching the carnage, like a man observing a mildly interesting chess game. He showed no anger, no frustration, no emotion at all. That scared Eli more than the guns. The second wave came differently. No charge this time. Instead, the remaining men spread out, using cover, advancing slowly and carefully. They had learned from the first assault. Halona's shots came less frequently now. The targets were harder to hit, constantly moving, constantly hiding. She wounded 2 more, but none fatally. At the second choke point, Naleen and Chenoa opened fire. The narrow corridor forced the attackers into a tight group, and the sisters made every shot count. 3 more men fell before the rest pulled back. But they were losing ground. Inch by inch, yard by yard, Whitmore's men were pushing closer to the cabin. And they were running out of ammunition. "Eli." Winona appeared at his side, her face streaked with sweat and dirt. "Mika is wounded. An arrow went through her shoulder. Katori is bringing her back." "How bad?" "She will live, but she cannot fight." 7 defenders now, against at least 15 attackers. "Pull everyone back to the cabin," Eli said. "We make our stand here." Winona nodded and ran to relay the order. The next few minutes were chaos. The sisters retreated in pairs, covering each other as they fell back toward the cabin. Eli stood at the door, firing at anything that moved, trying to buy them time. One by one they made it through. Katori carrying Mika Nalan, supporting Chenoa, who had taken a graze across her ribs. Halona climbing down from the hayloft with her rifle still smoking. Last came Winona, sprinting across the open ground, bullets kicking up dust around her feet. Eli reached out and grabbed her arm, pulling her through the door, just as a shot splintered the frame inches from her head. "That was close," she gasped. "Too close." Eli slammed the door shut and braced it with the heavy beam. Everyone inside. Everyone. They gathered in the center of the cabin, 8 women and 1 man surrounded by enemies running low on everything except determination. Chenoa was already working on Mika's shoulder, her hands steady despite her own wound. Little Adsila held the lamp, her face pale but focused. Ayana passed bandages and kept pressure on the bleeding. "We cannot hold them off forever," Nalan said. "There are too many." "We do not need forever," Eli replied. "We just need long enough." "Long enough for what?" Before Eli could answer, a voice rang out from outside. "Thornton, this is your last chance." Whitmore. He had moved closer, close enough for his voice to carry clearly. "You have fought well, better than I expected. But it is over now. You are out of ammunition, out of options, out of time. Surrender the women and the map, and I will let you live. I give you my word." Eli looked at the sisters, at their wounds, their exhaustion, their fear. At Winona, whose dark eyes held nothing but trust. He walked to the window. "Whitmore." "Yes?" "You want my answer?" "I am waiting." Eli raised his Winchester and fired. The shot went wide, deliberately so. But it made Whitmore flinch, and that was enough. "That is my answer." A long pause. Then Whitmore's voice came again colder, now stripped of all pretense of civility. "Very well, Mr. Thornton. You have made your choice. Now you will live with the consequences. Or rather—" a thin smile entered his voice. "You will not." He shouted orders to his men. Eli could not make out the words, but he understood their meaning. They were going to burn the cabin down. Eli turned to face the sisters. "Is there another way out?" Winona shook her head. "1 door, 4 windows, all covered." "What about the floor? Any cellars tunnels?" "Nothing." Eli's mind raced. They were trapped. No escape, no reinforcements, no miracle waiting in the wings. Just 8 women, 1 man, and a circle of killers closing in. Then Adsila spoke up. "The spring." Everyone turned to look at her. "The spring?" She repeated, her small voice stronger now. "Father always said it connected to caves. Caves that went all through the valley. He used to explore them when he was young." Winona's eyes widened. "The spring enters the land through the western canyon. But the cave system? I always thought those were just stories." "They are not stories." Ayana's voice was quiet but certain. "I went there once with Koda, before everything happened. The caves are real. Some of them are big enough to walk through." Eli felt hope flicker in his chest. "How do we reach them?" "The well," Adsila said. "Father said the well connects to the underground stream. If we go down, we can reach the caves," Winona finished. "We can escape." Outside, they could hear Whitmore's men moving into position. The smell of oil and smoke drifted through the cracks in the walls. "How deep is the well?" Eli asked. "Maybe 30 feet. There is a ledge about halfway down that leads to a side tunnel." "Can everyone climb?" The sisters looked at each other. Mika's shoulder was badly wounded. Chenoa was bleeding. Adsila was just a child. "We will manage," Winona said firmly. Eli nodded. "Then let us move. Now." They worked fast. Rope from the supply pile tied to the well's support beam. Eli went first, descending into the darkness, his boots scraping against wet stone. The well was narrow, barely wide enough for his shoulders. Cold water rushed past his legs as he climbed down, feeling for the ledge Adsila had described. 20 feet. 25. Then his foot found solid rock. "I found it," he called up. "There is a tunnel. Send the next person." One by one they descended. Adsila, then Ayana, then Chenoa and Mika together. Nalin Katori Halona. Finally, Winona. As she climbed down, Eli could hear shouts from above. Whitmore's men had reached the cabin. They were kicking in the door. "Faster!" he urged. Winona dropped the last few feet, and Eli caught her. For a moment they stood there in the darkness, her body pressed against his, their hearts pounding in unison. "They are inside," she whispered. "I know. They will find the well." "I know." They moved deeper into the tunnel, the sisters forming a line behind them. The darkness was absolute, the air cold and damp. Water dripped from somewhere ahead, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Behind them, they heard a shout. They went down the well after them. Eli grabbed Winona's hand and ran. The tunnel twisted and turned, sometimes narrowing, until they had to squeeze through sideways, sometimes opening into chambers big enough to stand upright. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them, growing fainter, as they put distance between themselves and their hunters. Then, the tunnel forked. "Which way?" Eli asked. Winona hesitated. "I do not know. I have never been this far." "Left," Ayanna said from behind them. "The stream flows left. Follow the water." They went left. The tunnel sloped downward, the water deepening until it reached their knees. The cold was brutal, sapping their strength with every step. Mika stumbled, and Nalin caught her. Adsila began to shiver uncontrollably. But they kept moving. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. Pale light filtered down from somewhere far above, illuminating walls covered in ancient paintings. Handprints, animals, symbols that spoke of a people who had lived and died in this valley long before any of them were born. "The sacred chamber," Winona breathed. "Father told us about this place. He said our ancestors used it for ceremonies." Eli looked around. The cavern had multiple exits, dark mouths leading into unknown depths. But one of them, the largest, showed signs of recent use. Footprints in the mud, a discarded torch. "Someone else has been here," he said. Winona nodded grimly. "Whitmore's men. They have been searching for the spring for years. They must have found these caves. Then they know the way out." "Yes, but they do not know we are here. Not yet." Eli made a decision. "We rest here. 5 minutes. Then we keep moving." No one argued. They collapsed against the cavern walls, too exhausted to speak. Chenoa checked Mika's wound by the faint light, her face tight with concern. Adsila curled up against Winona, shivering but alive. Eli sat apart from the others, watching the tunnel entrances, listening for any sign of pursuit. Winona came to sit beside him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For everything. For cutting us down. For staying. For fighting beside us." She paused. "For giving us hope." Eli shook his head. "I have not done anything yet. We are not out of this." "No, but we are still alive. A week ago I did not think that was possible." She reached out and took his hand. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know something." "What?" Winona leaned closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "I am glad you came to this valley, Eli Thornton. I am glad you bought this cursed land with your cursed money. Because if you had not, I would have died never knowing that men like you still existed." Eli felt something break inside him, something that had been locked away for 10 years. "Winona, Shh." She pressed a finger to his lips. "Do not say anything. Not yet. Wait until we survive this. Then you can tell me everything." She pulled back, but her hand remained in his. In the darkness of the sacred chamber, surrounded by the ghosts of the past, Eli Thornton made a silent promise. He would get them out of here. All of them. Or he would die trying. The 5 minutes passed too quickly. Then they were moving again, following the largest tunnel deeper into the mountain. The light faded, the darkness returned. But somewhere ahead, Eli could feel it. Fresh air, Freedom. They were going to make it. They had to. The tunnel seemed endless. Eli moved through the darkness with one hand on the cold stone wall, the other gripping Winona's fingers. Behind them, the sisters followed in a silent line, their breaths echoing off the ancient rock. The fresh air grew stronger with each step. Somewhere ahead, freedom waited. But so did danger. "Stop." Winona's whisper cut through the darkness. Eli froze. "What is it?" "Listen." He held his breath and listened. At first, nothing. Then faint, but unmistakable, the sound of voices. Men talking, laughing, close. "Whitmore's men," Winona breathed. "They must have circled around to cut us off." Eli's heart sank. Of course Whitmore would have men guarding the cave exits. He had been hunting this spring for 3 years. He knew every inch of this land. "How many?" Eli asked. "I cannot tell. At least 3, maybe more." Behind them, Nolan moved forward. "We cannot go back. I can hear pursuit in the tunnels behind us." Trapped. Again. Eli's mind raced. They were caught between 2 forces, wounded, exhausted, nearly out of ammunition. The odds had been bad before. Now they were impossible. "There has to be another way," he said. "There is not." Winona's voice was flat. "I know these caves. This is the only exit on this side of the mountain. Then we fight through." "With what?" "We have 1 rifle with 3 bullets, a few knives. That is all." "Then we use what we have." Winona grabbed his arm. "Eli, listen to me. If we charge out there, we die. All of us, including Adsila." The mention of the child's name hit Eli like a punch to the gut. He looked back at the small figure huddled between Ayanna and Chenoa, shivering in the cold, her eyes wide with fear. She was 12 years old. She should be playing Laughing Living, not dying in a dark cave because of a madman's greed. "What do you suggest?" Eli asked. Winona was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady, but heavy with something Eli did not want to name. "I go out there. Alone. I distract them while the rest of you find another way." "No." "Eli." I said no. His voice was harder than he intended. "We already had this conversation. We fight together, we survive together. I am not letting you sacrifice yourself." "This is not about sacrifice. This is about survival. My sisters need to live. Adsila needs to live. If my death gives them a chance, your death gives them nothing." Eli turned to face her, fully gripping her shoulders. "Do you understand that nothing? They need you, Winona. They need their leader, their protector, their sister. If you die, a part of them dies too." Winona's eyes glistened in the faint light. "And if we all die, what then?" "Then we die together, fighting, not giving up." They stared at each other, 2 stubborn wills locked in silent combat. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Ayanna spoke. "There is another way." Everyone turned to look at her. It was the most she had spoken since Eli had met her, and her voice carried an authority that surprised him. "Coda showed me," Ayanna continued. "When we came here before, there is a passage that leads to the top of the cliff above the main exit. It is narrow, dangerous, but it exists." "Why did you not mention this before?" Nolan demanded. "Because I was not sure I could find it again. But now—" Ayanna closed her eyes, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I remember. It is back near the sacred chamber. A crack in the eastern wall behind the largest painting." Eli looked at Winona. "How far back?" 10 minutes. Maybe 15. "And the men behind us?" Helona, who had been watching the rear, answered. "I can hear them, but they are moving slowly. Searching every side passage. We have time." "Then we go back." Eli made the decision without hesitation. "Find the passage, get to the top of the cliff. From there we can see what we are dealing with." They moved quickly, retracing their steps through the darkness. Ayanna took the lead now. her hand trailing along the wall, searching for landmarks only she could recognize. The sacred chamber appeared out of the gloom, its ancient paintings barely visible in the faint light filtering from above. Ayanna went straight to the eastern wall, her fingers tracing the outline of a massive painted bison. "Here," she said. "Behind this." Eli looked. At first he saw nothing. Just solid rock covered in centuries of mineral deposits. But then Ayanna pressed against a specific point, and a section of the wall shifted slightly. "Help me," she said. Eli and Nayland added their weight. The rock groaned, then swung inward, revealing a narrow crack barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Cold air rushed out carrying the smell of pine and open sky. "Everyone through," Eli ordered. Adsila first, then the wounded. They filed through one by one, squeezing past rough stone that scraped at their clothes and skin. The passage climbed steeply, more ladder than path, with handholds carved into the rock by unknown hands. Eli went last, pulling the stone door closed behind him. It would not fool Whitmore's men for long, but it might buy them a few extra minutes. The climb was brutal. His arms burned, his legs shook, and the darkness pressed in from all sides. More than once he heard one of the sisters slip, followed by a gasp and the scramble of desperate hands finding purchase. But no one fell. No one gave up. After what felt like an eternity, the passage leveled out and pale light appeared ahead. Eli pulled himself up the final stretch and emerged onto a narrow ledge overlooking the valley. The view stole his breath. The cave exit was directly below them, about 50 feet down. He could see 4 of Whitmore's men gathered around a small fire, their horses tethered nearby. Beyond them, smoke rose from the direction of the cabin. They had burned it. His cabin. His dream. Eli felt a moment of pure helpless rage. Then he forced it down. There would be time for anger later, if they survived. 4 guards, he said quietly. Plus the horses. Winona crawled up beside him and looked down. If we could get to those horses, we would have a chance. But how? The cliff is too steep to climb down, and they would hear us coming. Eli studied the terrain. The guards were relaxed, confident. They thought they had their prey trapped underground. They were not expecting an attack from above. An idea began to form in his mind. A crazy idea. A desperate idea. Exactly the kind of idea that might work. "Helona," he said. "How many bullets do you have left?" 3. "Can you hit those men from here?" Helona looked at the distance, calculating. 2 of them. Maybe 3 if I am lucky, but the 4th will have time to react. "That is all I need." Eli turned to Nayland and Katori. "You 2 are the fastest. When Helona fires, I need you to get down there and take out the 4th guard before he can raise the alarm." Nayland's eyes widened. "Get down there, how?" Eli pointed to a rocky slope about 20 feet to their left. It was steep, but not vertical, covered with loose scree and scrub brush. "You slide, fast and quiet. Helona's shots will cover the noise." Nayland looked at the slope, then at Eli, then back at the slope. "That is insane. That is our only chance." Nayland and Katori exchanged glances. Then Nayland nodded slowly. "All right, we do it." They moved into position. Helona lay flat on the ledge, her rifle steady, her eye pressed to the sight. Nayland and Katori crouched at the top of the slope, knives in hand, ready to move. Eli felt Winona's hand on his arm. "What about you?" she asked. "I go with them. The 4th guard is mine." "Eli, we do not have time to argue." He met her eyes. "Take care of the others. Get them ready to move the moment those horses are free." Winona looked like she wanted to argue, but the words died on her lips. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Always." Then he was moving, sliding into position beside Nayland and Katori. "On Helona's first shot," he said. "Ready." They nodded. Below, one of the guards laughed at something another had said. The sound drifted up casual and careless. They had no idea what was coming. Halona's rifle cracked. The first guard dropped without a sound. Before his companions could react, she fired again. The second guard spun and fell. Eli was already moving, sliding down the slope in a controlled fall, rocks and dirt cascading around him. He could hear Nolan and Katori beside him, their breath harsh with exertion. The third guard died, reaching for his gun, Halona's final bullet catching him in the chest. The fourth guard was faster. He had his weapon drawn and was turning toward the slope when Eli hit the ground running. 20 feet. 15. 10. The guard saw him and raised his pistol. 5 feet. Eli ducked under the shot and drove his shoulder into the man's midsection. They went down hard, rolling in the dust. The gun flew from the guard's hand. Eli came up first, his knife flashing. It was over in seconds. Eli stood there breathing hard, the knife slick with blood in his hand. Around him, the bodies of 4 men lay still. The horses stamped nervously, disturbed by the violence, but not frightened enough to bolt. Nayland appeared at his side. "Are you hurt?" "No. Get the horses ready." They worked quickly. Within minutes, they had 4 horses saddled and ready. Not enough for everyone, but enough to carry the wounded and make better time. The sisters descended from the cliff using a path Ayana had found, a narrow track hidden behind a screen of brush. One by one, they emerged into the open air, blinking in the afternoon light. Mika could barely stand. Chenoa was gray with pain, but they were alive, all of them. "We need to move," Eli said. "Whitmore will realize something is wrong when his men do not report back." "Where do we go?" Nayland asked. "The cabin is burned. The valley is surrounded." Winona answered. "North, toward the Canadian border. If we can cross into British territory, Whitmore cannot touch us." "That is 100 miles through wilderness." "Then we had better start now." They mounted up. Mika and Chenoa shared one horse Adsila rode with Ayana, and the others doubled up as best they could. Eli took the lead with Winona beside him. The valley stretched out before them, beautiful and deadly. Somewhere behind them, Whitmore was waiting. Somewhere ahead, freedom. They had maybe a few hours before the hunt resumed. Eli kicked his horse into motion. They rode hard for the first hour, putting as much distance between themselves and the cave as possible. The terrain was rough, the trails narrow and treacherous, but the horses were sure-footed, and the sisters were determined. As the sun began to sink toward the western peaks, Eli called a halt beside a small stream. "Rest the horses," he said. 5 minutes." The sisters dismounted gratefully, stretching cramped muscles and drinking from the cold water. Eli walked the perimeter, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Winona joined him. "You saved us," she said. "Back there at the cave, you saved all of us." "We saved each other." "No, you made a choice. When Whitmore offered you a way out, you could have taken it. You could have walked away and lived." "I could not." "Why?" Eli was quiet for a long moment, staring at the distant mountains. "When I came home from the war and found my family dead, I made a promise to myself. I promised that I would never let anyone else die, because I was not there to protect them. But that promise turned into something else. It turned into isolation, into running, into building walls so high that nothing could get through." He turned to face her. "Then I cut you down from that gate, and suddenly the walls did not matter anymore. Suddenly I had something worth protecting again." Winona's eyes softened. "Eli, I know we barely know each other. I know this is not the time for whatever this is. But I need you to understand something." He took her hand. "I am not going anywhere. Whatever happens, wherever we end up, I am staying. With you. With your sisters. With this family we have somehow built out of blood and desperation." Winona stared at him. Then slowly she smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Eli had ever seen. "I believe you," she said. That terrifies me. But I believe you." Before Eli could respond, Helona's voice cut through the moment. "Riders, coming fast from the south." Eli's hand went to his rifle. He ran to the edge of the clearing and looked. Dust cloud, maybe 2 miles back. At least a dozen horses. Whitmore had found them. "Everyone mount up," Eli shouted. "Now!" They scrambled onto the horses' exhaustion forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. Within seconds they were moving again, pushing the horses harder than was safe. The terrain grew more difficult as they climbed into the foothills. The trail narrowed, switching back and forth up the mountainside. Below them they could see the dust cloud growing closer. "They are gaining on us," Nayland said. "I know. What do we do?" Eli's mind raced. They could not outrun Whitmore's men on tired horses with wounded riders. They needed to slow them down somehow. Buy time. Then he saw it. A narrow pass between 2 cliff faces barely wide enough for 2 horses abreast. "There," he said, pointing. "That is where we make our stand." "With what?" Nayland demanded. "We are out of ammunition." "Not quite." Eli reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were 3 sticks of dynamite he had taken from the cabin before they fled. He had hoped he would not need them. Hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. "Get everyone through the pass," he said. "I will hold them here." "Eli, no." Winona started. "This is not a sacrifice. It is strategy. I light the dynamite, bring down the cliff, and block the pass. Then I climb over the rubble and catch up with you. And if the explosion catches you, then you keep riding. Do not stop until you reach Canada." Winona's face contorted with emotion. "I will not leave you." "You will, because your sisters need you, because Adsila needs you." Eli's voice softened. "Because I am asking you to." They stared at each other. Around them, the thunder of approaching hooves grew louder. "Winona," Nayland said urgently, "we have to go." Winona looked at her sister, then back at Eli. Her jaw tightened. "You come back to me," she said. "You promised. Always. Always." She kissed him, hard and fast, and desperate, tasting of tears and dust and something that might have been love. Then she was gone, spurring her horse through the pass, the others following close behind. Eli dismounted and sent his horse after them, with a slap on its flank. Then he climbed to a ledge overlooking the trail, dynamite in hand. The riders appeared around the bend. A dozen men, maybe more, led by a familiar figure on a black horse. Whitmore himself. Eli struck a match and touched it to the fuse. "Come on," he muttered. "Just a little closer." Whitmore saw him. Their eyes met across the distance. For a moment, neither moved. Then Whitmore smiled. "Thornton," he called out, still playing the hero. "Something like that." "You cannot win, you know that. Even if you kill me, my men will hunt you down. They will find the women. They will take what is mine." "Maybe, but you will not be around to see it." The fuse burned lower. 5 seconds. 4. Whitmore's smile faded. "You would die for them. For savages. They are not savages. They are family." 3 seconds. 2. Eli threw the dynamite. The explosion was deafening. The cliff face shattered tons of rock, cascading down onto the trail below. Horses screamed. Men shouted. Eli was thrown backward by the blast, slamming into the rock wall behind him. Pain exploded through his ribs. His vision blurred. When the dust cleared, the pass was completely blocked. A wall of rubble 15 feet high separated him from Whitmore's men. But something was wrong. Eli tried to stand, but his legs would not cooperate. He looked down and saw blood soaking through his shirt. A shard of rock had caught him in the side. He pressed his hand against the wound, feeling the warm wetness seeping between his fingers. Not fatal. Maybe. If he could stop the bleeding. He stumbled to his feet and began climbing the rubble pile, each movement sending waves of agony through his body. On the other side, he could hear Whitmore's men shouting, trying to find a way around the blockade. It would take them hours, maybe longer. Eli made it to the top of the rubble and half climbed, half fell down the other side. The sisters were gone, their hoofprints disappearing into the distance. Good. They were safe, for now. He staggered forward one step at a time, leaving a trail of blood behind him. The world swam in and out of focus. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Just a little farther, just a little more. He did not know how long he walked. Minutes, hours. Time lost all meaning. When he finally collapsed, it was on a carpet of pine needles, with the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He thought of Winona, of her fierce eyes and gentle hands, of the promise he had made. Always. He hoped she would forgive him. The darkness closed in, and Eli Thornton knew nothing more. The first thing he felt was warmth, then pain. Deep, throbbing pain that radiated from his side and spread through his entire body. Then a voice. Soft. Worried. Familiar. Eli! Eli, can you hear me? He tried to open his eyes. The light was too bright. He squeezed them shut again. He is waking up. Another voice. Naylan. Get Chenoa. Hands touched his face. Cool and gentle. Eli, please. Open your eyes. Winona. That was Winona's voice. Eli forced his eyes open. She was there, her face hovering above him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Behind her, he could see the other sisters gathered around, their expressions, a mixture of relief and worry. You came back, Winona whispered. I promised. She laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. You fool! You beautiful, stubborn fool! Is everyone? Everyone is safe. We found you on the trail, barely breathing. Chenoa has been working on you for hours. Eli tried to sit up, but pain slammed him back down. Do not move, Chenoa ordered, appearing at his side. You lost a lot of blood. The rock missed anything vital, but you need rest. Whitmore. Gone, Naylan said. For now. The rock slide blocked the pass completely. It will take them days to find another route. Then we need to keep moving. Not yet. Winona's hand pressed gently on his chest. You nearly died, Eli. You need to heal. I can heal on the move. You can heal right here where I can watch you and make sure you do not do anything else stupid. Eli looked at her. At the worry in her eyes, the determination in her jaw, the love that she was trying so hard to hide. All right, he said. But only until morning. Winona smiled through her tears. Until morning, she agreed. Around them, the sisters relaxed. Adsila curled up against Eli's good side, her small body warm against his. Ayana sat nearby, weaving something with her hands, humming softly. For the first time in 3 days, there was peace. It would not last. Eli knew that. Whitmore was still out there, still hunting them. The war was not over. But for now, in this moment, surrounded by the family he had found in the most unlikely of places, Eli Thornton allowed himself to rest. Tomorrow, they would run again. Tomorrow, they would fight again. But tonight, they were together. They were alive. And that was enough. 3 days passed in a haze of pain and fever. Eli drifted in and out of consciousness, his body fighting to repair the damage the explosion had caused. In his lucid moments, he saw faces hovering above him. Chenoa checking his bandages. Nalin standing guard at the entrance of whatever shelter they had found. Adsila bringing him water with hands that trembled slightly. And always, always Winona. She stayed beside him through the worst of it, holding his hand when the fever spiked, cooling his forehead with damp cloths, speaking softly to him, in words he could not always understand, but which comforted him nonetheless. On the 4th morning, Eli woke to find the fever broken and his mind clear. You look terrible, Nalin said from across the small cave. Eli tried to laugh, but it came out as a wheeze. You should see the other guy. We did. There were pieces of him scattered across half the mountainside. Nolan's expression softened slightly. That was a brave thing you did, Eli. Stupid but brave. Seems like everything I do these days is both. Winona appeared at the cave entrance carrying a rabbit she had caught. When she saw Eli sitting up, her face transformed with relief. You are awake. She dropped the rabbit and crossed to him in 3 quick strides. How do you feel? Like I was hit by a mountain, which I suppose I was. Do not joke. I thought you were going to die. So did I for a while there. Winona knelt beside him, her hand finding his. Never do that again. Do you hear me? Never. I cannot promise that. Then lie to me. Eli looked into her eyes, saw the fear and love and desperation swirling there. I will never do it again, he said. Winona knew it was a lie. He knew she knew. But sometimes lies were necessary. Sometimes they were the only things that kept people from falling apart. Good, she whispered. Now eat something. You need your strength. The next few days were torture of a different kind. Eli's body wanted to rest, to heal, to take the time it needed to recover. But his mind kept screaming that Whitmore was out there, that every hour they stayed in one place was another hour the hunters drew closer. On the 6th day, he insisted on moving. You are not strong enough, Chenoa protested. I am strong enough to sit on a horse. Barely. Barely is enough. They argued, but Eli would not be swayed. Finally, Winona intervened. He is right, she said quietly. We have stayed too long. I can feel them getting closer. Her sisters looked at her with varying degrees of alarm. You can feel them? Nayland asked. Our father had the gift. He could sense danger before it arrived. I always thought I did not inherit it. Winona's jaw tightened. But I feel it now. A darkness coming from the south. We need to move. No one argued after that. They broke camp within the hour, loading what little they had onto the horses and setting out toward the north. Eli rode double with Winona, his arms wrapped around her waist, his body aching with every step the horse took. But he did not complain. He had lost the right to complain when he decided to blow up a mountainside. The terrain grew more rugged as they climbed higher into the mountains. The trails became narrower, steeper, more treacherous. Several times they had to dismount and lead the horses through passages too dangerous to ride. On the 2nd day of travel, they came upon a sight that stopped them all in their tracks. A burned-out wagon. 2 bodies decomposed but recognizable as a man and a woman. Scattered belongings picked over by animals and weather. Settlers, Eli said grimly. Heading west by the look of it. Never made it. Nayland dismounted and examined the scene. They have been dead for weeks, before the first snow. Whitmore's men. No, look. She pointed to arrows embedded in the wagon's side. These are not our arrows. Wrong fletching, wrong style. Blackfoot, Winona said quietly. They have been raiding along this route for months. The white settlers are moving into their hunting grounds. They are fighting back. Eli looked at the bodies at the senseless waste of life. 2 more casualties in a war that had no winners. We should bury them, he said. We do not have time. We make time. He dismounted painfully and began gathering rocks. After a moment, the sisters joined him. It took nearly an hour, but when they finished, the man and woman lay beneath a proper cairn, marked with a simple wooden cross fashioned from wagon scraps. May you find peace, Winona murmured. May your spirits walk in light. It was an Apache blessing spoken over white graves. The irony was not lost on anyone. They rode on. The 8th day brought them to the edge of a vast plateau, with the Canadian border just visible as a line of distant mountains. Almost there, Nolan breathed. Another 2 days, maybe 3. If Whitmore does not catch us first, Helona said, he will not. Eli's voice was stronger now, his body finally beginning to heal. He cannot follow us across the border, British territory is beyond his reach. You think borders matter to men like Whitmore? They matter to the law, and right now, the law is the only ally we have." As if in answer to his words, a sound drifted up from the valley below. Hoofbeats, many of them. Eli's heart sank. They had found them. "How many?" Winona asked, her voice tight. Helona scrambled to a vantage point and looked down. Her face went pale. "All of them," she said. "Whitmore brought everyone he has left, 20 men, maybe more, and they are less than an hour behind us." Eli felt the familiar cold clarity settling over him, the clarity of a man facing his final battle. "We cannot outrun them," he said, "not with wounded riders on tired horses." "Then what do we do?" Eli looked at the terrain ahead. The plateau narrowed into a natural bottleneck about half a mile ahead, flanked by steep cliffs on either side. Beyond that, the land opened up again, rolling gently toward the border. "We hold them there," he said, pointing. "At the bottleneck, long enough for most of us to get across." "Most of us?" Winona's voice sharpened. "What do you mean, most of us?" "Someone has to stay behind. Hold the line. Give the others time to escape." "No." Winona grabbed his arm. "We already discussed this. No sacrifices." "This is not a sacrifice. It is simple math. If we all try to run, they catch us. If someone stays, the others live." "And who would stay, you?" "Yes." The word hung in the air between them. Around them, the sisters had gone silent, watching the exchange with fearful eyes. "I will not allow it," Winona said. "It is not your choice to make." "The hell it is not." Winona stepped in front of him, her eyes blazing. "You do not get to decide to die for us, Eli Thornton. Not again. I forbid it." "Winona?" "No." Her voice cracked. "I have lost everyone I ever loved. My father, my mother, my brothers, my entire people. I will not lose you too. I cannot." Eli felt something break inside him. The walls he had rebuilt so carefully crumbled to dust. "Then come with me," he said. "What?" "You heard me. If I am going to make a stand, I want you beside me, fighting together, the way it was always supposed to be." Winona stared at him. "You would ask me to die with you?" "No, I am asking you to live with me, for as long as we can, whatever comes." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Winona's face softened, and she reached up to touch his cheek. "You are impossible," she whispered. "I know. I should hate you, but you do not." "No." A tear slid down her cheek. "God help me, I do not." Nayland stepped forward. "If you two are finished, we need to make a decision. They will be here soon." Eli turned to face the group. 8 women, battered and exhausted, but still standing, still fighting. "Here is what we do," he said. "Ayana Chenoa Mika Katori and Adsila ride ahead. Get across the border as fast as you can. Do not stop for anything." "And the rest of us?" Nalin asked. "Nalin, Helona, Winona, and I hold the bottleneck. We slow them down, buy time." "That is suicide." "No, it is a chance. A slim one, but a chance." Nalin looked at her sisters, then back at Eli. Her jaw tightened. "I am not leaving Winona," she said. "I know. That is why I included you." "And me," Helona said. "I am the best shot. You need me." Eli nodded. "I know." Ayana stepped forward, her eyes red but clear. "Take care of my sisters," she said. "Promise me." "I promise." She hugged him, brief and fierce, then moved to help the wounded mount their horses. Adsila was the hardest. The little girl clung to Winona, sobbing, refusing to let go. "I want to stay with you," she cried. "Please, do not make me leave." Winona knelt down and took her sister's face in her hands. "Listen to me, little one. You are the future of our people. Everything our father fought for, everything our mother died for, It lives in you. You have to survive. You have to carry our story forward. But I am scared. I know. I am scared too. But being scared does not mean being weak. It means being human. Winona kissed her forehead. Now go. Run fast. Do not look back. Adsala threw her arms around Winona's neck one last time. Then she let go and ran to where Ayana was waiting on horseback. The 5 riders disappeared over the rise heading north. Eli watched them until they were out of sight. Then he turned to face the approaching storm. They took their positions at the bottleneck. Eli and Winona on one side, Nalin and Helona on the other. The narrow passage forced anyone coming through to bunch up, making them easy targets. They had 1 rifle with 2 bullets, 3 bows with maybe a dozen arrows between them, and a handful of knives. Against 20 armed men. Eli laughed. Winona looked at him sharply. What is funny? Nothing. Everything. I spent 10 years running from death, and now I am standing here waiting for it. You are not going to die. How do you know? Because I will not let you. Eli smiled. That is what I love about you, Winona. Your complete refusal to accept reality. Reality is what we make it. Before Eli could respond, the first riders appeared at the edge of the valley. Whitmore led them as always. His silver hair gleamed in the afternoon sun, and his pale eyes were fixed on the bottleneck where Eli and the sisters waited. He raised his hand, and the column halted. Thornton, his voice carried clearly across the distance. I have to admire your persistence. You have cost me a great deal of time and money. Should have left us alone, Eli called back. That was never an option, you know that. Whitmore nudged his horse forward a few steps. But I am a reasonable man. Here is my final offer. Give me the map pieces, and I will let you go. All of you. You have my word. Your word is worthless. Perhaps. But what choice do you have? You are 4 people with barely any weapons. I have 20 men with rifles and ammunition to spare. You cannot win. Maybe not, but we can make you pay. Whitmore sighed. So be it. He turned to his men and raised his arm. Kill them all. The charge came fast and hard. Horses thundered toward the bottleneck riders, firing as they came. Bullets whined past Eli's head, pinging off rocks, kicking up dirt. Helona fired first. Her shot took the lead rider out of his saddle. Before the body hit the ground, she had tossed the rifle to Nalin, who fired the second and last bullet. 2 down. 18 to go. The bottleneck forced the riders into a single file, and the sisters made them pay for every foot of ground. Arrows flew from the rocks, finding gaps in defenses, slipping past raised arms. 3 more men fell, but they kept coming. There were too many. The defenders were being overwhelmed. Fall back, Eli shouted. Second position. They retreated to a rocky outcrop about 50 yards behind the bottleneck. It was higher ground, harder to assault, but they were running out of arrows. The riders regrouped and came again. This time, some of them dismounted and began climbing the rocks on foot. Eli met the first one with his knife. They struggled for a moment, then Eli's blade found its mark. The man fell. Another took his place, then another. Eli fought like a man possessed, driven by rage and desperation, and something that felt strangely like joy. He was done running, done hiding. For the first time in 10 years, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Beside him, Winona fought with equal ferocity. She had picked up a fallen rifle and was using it as a club, swinging with devastating precision. Nalin and Helona guarded the flanks, their knives flashing in the afternoon light. For a few glorious minutes, it seemed like they might actually hold. Then Silas appeared. He came through the chaos like a ghost, his ruined face twisted into something that might have been a smile. He ignored the other defenders and headed straight for Eli. "Thornton," he rasped, "I have been waiting for this." Eli raised his knife. "Then stop waiting." They clashed. Silas was faster than he looked. His blade snaked out, slicing Eli's arm before he could react. Eli countered with a thrust that Silas sidestepped easily. They circled each other, looking for openings. Around them, the battle raged on. "You should have taken Whitmore's offer," Silas said. "You could have lived." "Living is not the same as being alive." Silas laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Philosophy, how touching. Let me teach you something about reality." He attacked. Fast, brutal, relentless. Eli blocked, parried, dodged, but he was slower now. The wound in his side had reopened. Blood soaked through his shirt. A blow caught him on the temple. The world spun. He went down. Silas stood over him, blade raised. "Any last words?" Eli looked up at him. At the ruined face, the dead eyes, the emptiness where a soul should have been. "Just one." "What?" Eli smiled. "Duck." Silas had just enough time to look confused before Winona's arrow took him through the throat. He stood there for a moment, swaying his hands, clawing at the shaft protruding from his neck. Then he fell crashing to the ground beside Eli. Dead. Winona appeared at Eli's side, helping him to his feet. "Are you all right?" "I have been better." "Can you fight?" Eli looked around. Bodies littered the ground. At least half of Whitmore's men were down. But so was Helona, clutching a wound in her leg. Nayland was bleeding from a gash on her forehead. And Whitmore was still alive, watching from a safe distance, his face contorted with rage. "I can fight," Eli said. "Then fight." The remaining attackers regrouped for a final assault. Maybe 10 of them, battered and bloodied, but still dangerous. Eli picked up a fallen sword and stood beside Winona. Behind him, Nalin helped Helona to her feet. "Together," Winona said. "Together." The charge came, and then from the north came the sound of thunder. Eli looked up and saw them. Riders, dozens of them, pouring over the ridge in a blue and gold wave. Cavalry, federal cavalry. The attackers saw them too. Panic rippled through their ranks. Some tried to flee, others threw down their weapons. Within minutes it was over. The cavalry surrounded what remained of Whitmore's gang. Orders were shouted, men were pulled from horses and thrown to the ground. And through it all, Whitmore sat frozen on his horse, his face a mask of disbelief. A cavalry officer rode up to Eli. His uniform was dusty, his face lined with fatigue, but his eyes were sharp. "Eli Thornton?" he asked. "Yes." "Captain James Harmon, United States Cavalry." He paused. "Augustus Harmon was my father." Eli felt the pieces fall into place. Marshal Harmon, the man Whitmore had killed, his son had come for justice. "Your father was a good man," Eli said. "He was, and he sent word to me before he died, told me about Whitmore, about what he was doing to the native peoples, about the corruption." Captain Harmon's jaw tightened. "I have been tracking Whitmore for weeks. You made it easy by blowing up half a mountain." "That was not the plan. Plans rarely survive contact with men like Whitmore." The captain turned to look at the silver-haired man being dragged from his horse. "But today, justice survives." Whitmore was thrown to the ground in front of Eli. His fine clothes were torn and dirty. His pale eyes, once so cold and confident, now burned with impotent fury. "This is not over," he spat. "I have friends in high places, judges, senators. They will have me free within a week." Captain Harmon knelt down beside him. "Actually, Mr. Whitmore, your friends have been remarkably eager to distance themselves from you. It seems no one wants to be associated with a man who murders federal marshals." Whitmore's face went pale. "You will stand trial for my father's death," the captain continued, "and for the massacre of the Bitter Root Band, and for every other crime you have committed in your miserable life." He stood up. "I hope they hang you slowly." Whitmore was dragged away, screaming protests that no one listened to. Eli watched him go, feeling something loosen in his chest. It was not quite relief, not quite satisfaction, but it was close. Winona appeared at his side. "Is it over?" It is over. Truly. Eli turned to face her. Behind him, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Whitmore will face justice. Your sisters are safe. The spring, the land, everything your father died to protect it all, belongs to you again. Winona's eyes filled with tears. I cannot believe it. Believe it. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. He held her, feeling her body shake with sobs she had been holding back for 3 long years. Around them the sisters gathered. Nalan Halona, and then riding back from the north Ayana and Chinoa and Mika and Katori. And Adsila. The little girl ran to Winona and Eli, throwing her arms around both of them. You are alive, she cried. You are both alive. We are alive, Winona confirmed. All of us. The 8 sisters stood together, battered and bloodied, but unbroken. And in their midst stood Eli Thornton, a man who had come to this valley seeking peace and found something far more precious: family. 2 weeks later, they returned to the valley. The cabin was gone, reduced to a pile of charred timbers. The barn was nothing but a skeleton. The fences were broken, the well fouled, the land scarred by fire and violence. But they were not looking at what had been destroyed. They were looking at what could be built. It will take years to rebuild, Nalan said. We have years, Winona replied. Eli stood beside her, his arm around her waist. His wounds had healed, leaving scars that would never fully fade. But scars were just proof of survival, proof of strength. Where do we start? He asked. Winona smiled. At the beginning, with the spring. They walked together to the western canyon, following the path that the sisters' father had walked so many years ago. The cave entrance was hidden behind a screen of brush, exactly as Ayana had described. Inside they found the spring. It bubbled up from deep within the earth, crystal clear and cold, flowing into a pool that reflected the light from the cave entrance. The walls were covered with ancient paintings, the same handprints and symbols they had seen in the sacred chamber. Our ancestors found this place 1,000 years ago, Winona said. They protected it, passed it down from generation to generation. And now it is yours again. No, Winona turned to face him. Now it is ours. She reached into her dress and pulled out her piece of the map. One by one, her sisters did the same. 8 fragments finally reunited. Winona placed them in Eli's hands. I do not understand, he said. Yes, you do. Winona's eyes were bright with emotion. You are one of us now, Eli Thornton. Not by blood, but by bond. By choice, by love. Winona, my father used to say that family is not about where you come from. It is about where you are going, and I want to go there with you. Eli looked at the map in his hands, at the sisters gathered around him, at the woman standing before him with her heart in her eyes. He had come to this valley looking for peace, looking for a place to hide from his pain. Instead, he had found something worth fighting for. Something worth living for. Something worth dying for. I love you, he said. The words came easily, naturally, as if he had been waiting his whole life to say them. Winona's face transformed with joy. I love you too. She kissed him, and the sisters cheered, and for a moment the cave was filled with laughter and light and hope. When they finally broke apart, Winona was crying. But they were good tears. Happy tears. What happens now? Adsila asked. Eli looked at the little girl, then at the sisters, then at Winona. Now, he said, we build a home. In the years that followed, the Bitter Root Valley became something it had never been before. A sanctuary, a refuge, a place where people of all backgrounds could find shelter and hope. Eli and Winona married in the spring in a ceremony that blended Apache traditions with those Eli remembered from his childhood. The sisters stood as witnesses. Captain Harmon attended, having become a friend and ally in the fight for justice. Whitmore was tried, convicted, and hanged. His empire crumbled. The lands he had stolen were returned to their rightful owners, or held in trust for the native peoples who had been displaced. The spring continued to flow, feeding the valley, sustaining the life that grew there. Each year, more people came. Settlers who had heard of the place where a broken man and 8 fierce women had stood against impossible odds and won. Eli taught the newcomers what he knew about farming, about building, about survival. Winona taught them about the land, about respect, about living in harmony with nature, and together they raised a family. 3 children born of their love, 2 boys and a girl named for the people they had lost and the future they had built. They grew up surrounded by aunts who spoiled them mercilessly and told them stories of the old days of the battles fought and the sacrifices made. Adsila grew into a strong young woman, eventually marrying a gentle man who loved her fiercely. She never forgot the lessons her sister had taught her about courage and hope. Nalan became the voice of the community, fighting for the rights of native peoples throughout the territory. Her sharp tongue and sharper mind earned her both enemies and admirers. Halona trained a new generation of hunters and defenders. Her leg never fully healed, but she walked with the pride of a warrior who had faced death and emerged victorious. Ayana found love again with a widower who had lost his wife to fever. Together they built a life filled with laughter and purpose. She never forgot Koda, but she learned that grief and joy could exist together, that loving again was not a betrayal, but a tribute. Chenoa became the valley's healer, passing down her knowledge to anyone willing to learn. She saved countless lives over the years, including Eli's when a fever nearly took him one harsh winter. Mika and Katori remained together, inseparable as always. They opened a trading post at the edge of the valley, becoming the link between the community and the outside world. And through it all, Eli and Winona stood at the center, their love, the foundation upon which everything was built. On the night of their 10th anniversary, they walked together to the spring. The cave was lit by torches, the ancient paintings dancing in the flickering light. "Do you remember the first time you saw me?" Winona asked. "How could I forget you were hanging upside down, covered in blood, and still managed to look like the most dangerous woman I had ever seen?" Dangerous. Terrifying. Beautiful. Absolutely terrifying. Winona laughed. "And you cut me down anyway." "Best decision I ever made." She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "No regrets." Eli thought about the question. Thought about the life he had built, the family he had found, the peace he had finally achieved. "Not one," he said. Outside, the wind carried the sounds of laughter and music from the settlement. Their children were playing. Their sisters were singing. Their community was thriving. It had been a long road, a hard road, a road paved with blood and sacrifice and more pain than any of them should have had to bear. But at the end of it, they had found something worth every moment of suffering. They had found each other, and in the heart of a brutal desert where evil had roamed free and shadows once covered every path they had built, something that would last long after they were gone. A home, a family, a legacy. Eli Thornton had spent 10 years running from death. But standing here in this sacred place, with the woman he loved beside him and the sounds of happiness echoing through the night, he finally understood something. He had not been running from death. He had been running toward life. He just had not known where to find it. Now he knew. It was here, in this valley, with these people, with her. And he would never run again. The end. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this journey, my dear friends. This story came from my heart, and I hope it touched yours. If you felt something listening to this tale, please leave a comment and tell me what moved you most. Subscribe to Wild West Storytelling for more adventures like this one. And remember, wherever you are in this world, you are never truly alone. Love finds us in the strangest places, and family is not always about blood. Sometimes it is about the people who choose to stand beside us when the darkness comes. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and keep believing in happy endings.